Another US tariff reprieve for Mexico and Canada. This time, all goods under their joint trade deal will be exempt for now. But that hasn't been enough to calm investor nerves, with global markets falling after Donald Trump's latest move. And we explore how AI is transforming healthcare in Kenya. Hello, I'm Oscar Sabakti with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. The US President Donald Trump has significantly expanded the goods exempted from his new tariffs on Canada and Mexico, America's two largest trading partners. Trump had imposed 25% tariffs on most goods from the neighbouring countries on Tuesday, but said he would temporarily spare carmakers on Wednesday. Now, the latest reprieve would apply to all goods that fall under the USMCA, the trade agreement Trump negotiated with Canada and Mexico in his first term. But according to a White House official, just over 60% of Canadian imports could still face the new tariffs because they're not USMCA-compliant, while around half of Mexican goods could be penalised. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has welcomed the latest decision, while Canada's Finance Minister has confirmed the country would delay a second wave of retaliatory tariffs on US products. Despite this latest reprieve, Trump still plans to introduce reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, targeting what he says are unfair trade practices. The trade war tensions have rattled markets and raised fears of economic turbulence. Our North America correspondent John Brain has more on Trump's latest trade moves.
I think there was one overriding theme, and that was the theme that America is being ripped off. This is something that he's hammered away at both before becoming president, after his first presidency, and now again in his second term. And he refers to it being ripped off in terms of trade. He believes that any country the US has a trade deficit with is ripping America off. And later on in that long news conference, he talked about NATO again. And you remember there were discussions, threats even in his first term that he would withdraw from NATO. And in his campaign, election campaign, he was asked about what he would do if a country wasn't paying enough towards NATO. He said, well, he wouldn't defend them. In fact, he would encourage Russia to attack. He didn't go that far this time, but he again said that there was no reason that the US would come to the defense of a country that wasn't paying its way. Clearly still not a fan of NATO. He didn't talk about pulling out at all, but he's certainly saying that the other nations need to step up. He says that because of his influence, they have increased their defense expenditure. Billions of dollars, he said, hundreds of billions of dollars extra in defense. He said before that the Americans were paying nearly 100% of NATO's bill. So that's really, in a nutshell, Donald Trump's philosophy, or one of his major philosophies through his presidency, this idea that America is not getting a fair deal. And so we're seeing that in with the NATO discussions, and more topically, of course, with tariffs, because he's just announced that he's suspending the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, but only for a month. And he made it clear there that it is only for a month. And on April the 2nd, those tariffs will go back into place, and also reciprocal tariffs and globally. So any country that imposes a tariff or a tax on American goods will have a similar tax applied to their goods. So in Donald Trump's vision, this will make everything equal. It'll mean that America is not getting ripped off anymore. Though, of course, it's causing great instability in the markets here, all the confusion, all the to and fro, here's a tariff, now I'm going to take it off or suspend it. And there is this sort of fear that a full-on global trade war is imminent.
But global markets are down, with Trump's latest tariff exemptions failing to calm investors. Stocks across the Asia-Pacific are mostly in the red, while long-term Japanese bond yields have hit levels unseen since the 2008 financial crisis. The yield on the 10-year JGB rose nearly 8 basis points to surpass 1.5% in conjunction with upward pressure on global yields. Investors are now awaiting China's January-February trade data, with exports expected to slow to 5% year-on-year. Imports are forecast to hold steady at around 1%. Oil remains below $70 a barrel after tumbling nearly 3% on the previous session to the lowest level in 3 years. The decline followed a larger than expected rise in US crude stockpiles, fueling concerns about slowing economic activity. Meanwhile, spot gold edged lower due to rising US Treasury yields and profit-taking. And the US dollar is hovering near a 4-month low as shifting tariff policies fueled uncertainty and increased concern about the growth prospects for the world's largest economy. Market attention is now turned to Friday's payrolls data for clues on the Federal Reserve's next monetary policy moves. Well, let's get more on this now with Terence Hove in Johannesburg. He's a senior financial market strategist at XNES. Really good to have you with us, Terence. It's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster for investors this week, hasn't it, amid the chopping and changing of Trump's tariff policies. Tell us more about how markets have reacted to the latest developments.
Yeah, good morning, Oscar, or good morning from Johannesburg. It's been quite a roller coaster of emotions and sentiment in the market, I think, for much of since the start of the year. Since the inauguration day of President Donald Trump, I think immediately we saw when he came into office, he did not waste a second to institute and sign in some of those measures that he had made promises to during his campaign trail. So that is the temperature that we actually have. It's quite heightened at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of back and forth with regards to tariffs being implemented or threats of tariffs being imposed by President Donald Trump and retaliatory tariffs to various counterparts. So, and I think that is the rhythm that investors and markets are going to be operating for much of this administration up until those objectives and promises that he made during his campaign trail are fulfilled. Because I think that is the key of the silver lining in the clouds, if we could call it that, is ultimately when those promises are fulfilled. And at the moment, we're still at the infancy of this presidency. So there's still much for President Donald Trump to get to in as far as campaign promises are concerned. So I think there's still more uncertainty to come from what we're experiencing at the moment.
But we know Trump's expanded tariff exemptions on Canada and Mexico are only temporary and are set to expire next month. It sounds like you expect this market volatility to continue. But we know Donald Trump in the past has taken great pride in seeing Wall Street stocks rise under his first administration. What's your outlook on equities then?
Yeah, I think equities will still be favorable. As you've mentioned, President Trump takes pride in the performance of the stock market. I don't think that is likely to change in this administration. But what is certainly happening is, those promises that will ultimately benefit, as he has said, America, putting America first. And that ultimately is meant to boost American corporates. And if American corporates are boosted, the stock market will inevitably do exceedingly well. So I would say that is likely perhaps the pattern of thought that we're seeing. But yes, the current tariffs or those that have been imposed, again, those are also negotiating tools to bring the parties to the tables to negotiate a favorable deal for America and ultimately America doing well. So I think in as far as the U.S. equities long-term wise, the positioning is the expectation for them to do well given the America First mantra of President Trump.
Okay, Terence Hove, we'll have to leave it there. Great to get your thoughts. Thank you. Now, a second runway at Gatwick Airport has been backed by the UK government if certain measures are met. But there's strong opposition to any airport expansion, especially from climate campaigners. Tülay Kalyon Haznederoğlu has more from London.
The UK government has provisionally approved Gatwick Airport's expansion plan. If it's fully approved, the claim is that it will help both local and national economy to grow.
Question. The expansion of Gatwick Airport is fundamentally important, not only to the airport, but to the UK economy as a whole. Because as we know that the airport is already almost maxing out at over 90% capacity, it needs to grow if it's going to keep the UK competitive in terms of trade, in terms of economy and innovation, and especially because of tourism.
Gatwick Airport is requested to formally respond to the government's conditions by April 24th, and a definitive decision is expected by October 27th. If permission is granted, work would start almost immediately. The $2.8 billion expansion will be funded through private investment. Once the expansion is completed, it's expected to generate about $1.3 billion annually. A new runway is also expected to create about 14,000 new jobs. Despite all the economic advantages, the project has faced criticism over environmental concerns, including noise pollution and increased emissions. Carbon Brief says the UK would need to plant a forest twice the size of Greater London to offset emissions from expanding airports such as Heathrow, Gatwick and Luton.
Those net zero goals are already being mandated by the UK government. With the expansion, there's an opportunity for Gatwick Airport to lead both in the UK and globally in terms of airport expansion that supports and actually accelerates the transition to sustainable aviation. So by building in sustainable aviation fuel, storage areas and utilization with the aircraft right at the point of the airport itself, building that into design, building in ways in which we can make sure that sustainable aviation efforts are being able to become part of the everyday traveler experience and the shipment of cargo. Ultimately, we need to make this airport part of the solution for the net zero quest, not an acceleration of a problem. And we can only do that if we do that in partnership with the government, with the local communities, with the aviation industry, and especially with leadership at the airport who are committed to making sure that this happens.
This provisional approval reflects a new trend in post-pandemic air travel growth, with Heathrow also seeking expansion. With planning approvals underway and construction set to begin soon, Gatwick Airport's expansion is set to be completed by 2030. And as the airport prepares to spread its wings, it's also in talks with major airlines to expand its routes and increase passenger numbers. Now all eyes are on the government for a final decision. Tülay Kalyon Haznederoğlu, TRT World, London.
Well, let's get more on this now from Vicky Price, a board member at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Really good to have you back with us, Vicky. We know the topic of airport expansion has been quite a debated one in the UK. The talk of a third runway at London's main airport, Heathrow, has been going on for years now, but it seems that we can expect to see a second runway at Gatwick. Tell us more about how that might impact not only the local economy, but the UK economy as a whole.
I think there is a general agreement that we need more airport capacity in the southeast in particular of the UK. And of course, we have a number of airports there. So you mentioned already Heathrow, and in the summary earlier on, there was also mention of Luton, what's going on there, all around London, the Stansted Airport and also City Airport. All those are getting the green light, if you like, in inverted commas, to expand. And now, of course, Gatwick, which has been arguing for quite some time that it is the least costly option to expand capacity, looks like it may be able to also do so. And the interesting thing about Gatwick is that it already has a runway. The northern runway is hardly used because of its position. It can't actually be used efficiently, so you just have to move the runway a little bit. Apparently it's just 12 meters, and then you're able to use the runways in a different way, one for landing, one for exiting, if you like, taking off, and that will increase the capacity by the end of this decade by about 50,000 extra than we've got at present, which is actually pretty good in terms of the number of flights that can go additionally from Gatwick, and that's pretty. It's quite a substantial increase in the number of passengers that could go through the airport, and it also has another impact. I mean, the Heathrow cost is an enormous one, which will be borne again by the private investors in the airport. But the interesting thing is that if you add all this extra capacity, then perhaps the cost and the extra work that needs to be done at Heathrow may be a little bit less, because Heathrow's expansion, as is planned at present, requires a massive infrastructure change. Basically building a tunnel under where one of the motorways is around Heathrow, the M25, closing the M25 in various bits, taking away quite a lot of houses and actual sort of villages that are all around. So having more capacity in all the other airports might actually mean that you could have an option at Heathrow which is less costly and less environmentally particularly objectionable.
Okay, Vicky Price, we will have to leave it there. Great to get your thoughts as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Donald Trump has signed an executive order to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve just before a crypto summit at the White House. White House crypto czar David Sachs said the reserve would be funded by Bitcoin seized during criminal or civil forfeitures, noting that the government currently holds about 200,000 Bitcoin, worth some $17.5 billion. But other details on how the reserve would work or how it would benefit taxpayers remain unclear. On Thursday, the SpaceX Starship, the largest rocket ever built, lost control shortly after its launch in Texas for a second time in a row. SpaceX confirmed the uncrewed spacecraft experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly during ascent and lost communication. While no injuries or damage have been reported, images from Caribbean islands show fiery debris falling from the sky. Broadcom shares have surged after reporting strong revenue and a positive AI outlook. The chip designer posted almost $15 billion in first quarter revenue, beating expectations. The company expects $4.4 billion in AI chip sales this quarter as demand for custom AI chips grows. And Walgreens is set to go private in a $10 billion deal with Sycamore Partners. The firm will buy shares for $11.45 each, with a chance for shareholders to get more later. The total deal, including debt, could reach about $24 billion. Walgreens expects to complete the sale by the end of the year. Kenya's government has unveiled a national strategy for artificial intelligence. It's designed to promote technological advancements that are ethical, inclusive and impactful. Alexandria Majala looks at how the health sector is using AI.
Kenya's growing tech scene has drawn comparisons to America's Silicon Valley and has often been referred to as the Silicon Savannah. And as Izzola's therapeutic platform that combines healthcare and technology to provide access to a range of specialists is a test case.
So for the Izzola platform, it came about, the idea of the platform came about during the COVID period. So you'd find that before that, people were used to the traditional type of therapy. But after COVID, during the COVID time, they weren't able to access these therapy services. Hence, we thought about digitizing and making the therapy services available to them.
Several startups are now developing AI solutions, and the country's health sector is no different. Innovators are trying to improve access to healthcare for vulnerable populations, which has always been a challenge.
We can take this opportunity to teach her how to read.
Terry Mokami's 11-year-old son is neurodivergent, which means his brain works differently, and he has also been diagnosed with autism.
We started noticing some challenges when he was in nursery school, where he'd have trouble settling down, sitting down in class and taking part in the activities as the rest of the children. Then when we started reading, started writing, he's a little bit slower than the rest of the kids.
According to the UNICEF 2023 Global Report on Children with Developmental Disabilities, there were approximately 317 million children and adolescents globally 6 years ago. But their needs have, however, been neglected in health systems, planning and policy provisions for health. While there's no official data on the number of children with autism in the country, the Autism Society of Kenya believes it could be up to 4% or nearly 1 child in 25. AI-powered health apps such as MTiba, MyDawa, Zuri Health, Good Life and Isola are using the tech to develop new treatments, improve diagnostic accuracy and personalized care for patients. Experts say that AI is not just a trend, but a revolutionary step that is changing the way healthcare is delivered. Alexandria Majala, TRT World, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, for more on this, we're joined now by Churchill Ogutu, an economist at the IC Group. He joins us now from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Welcome back to the program, Churchill. We know governments around the world are currently grappling with this idea of ensuring that AI remains ethical. How, in your view, is Kenya trying to achieve that with its new AI strategy?
Yeah, thanks for having me and a good morning. So Kenya launched its national strategy on artificial intelligence with a view of looking at those considerations. So we know that with AI adoption, there's been some issues around data. So there's ethical consideration to look at issues such as misinformation and also disinformation, and also the privacy concerns and safety online. So those are some of the issues under the ethical considerations. But if you look at also the positive aspects of that is now the technological advancements. So the national strategy on artificial intelligence is also looking at issues to develop the digital infrastructure and also to ramp up the data ecosystem and also the research and innovation so as to be able to develop a better artificial intelligence tools. So it is a positive step in the right direction. More so that we know in Kenya we don't have an actual legislation around artificial intelligence. So the first step is now to have the strategy in place, and once we have the strategy in place, I think years down the line we could now be able to see the necessary legislation that can be able to anchor a more cohesive artificial intelligence network.
We know ensuring equitable access to healthcare is a problem for governments around the world, including in Kenya. Do you believe that AI technology could increase access to healthcare services for vulnerable communities in the country?
Yeah, definitely. And I look at it from the digital, from the infrastructure perspective. Traditionally, we could rely on the public access, the hospitals, and in the more marginalized communities, the faith-based organizations who are now attending to the more marginalized communities. But after that, you've seen the mobile technology, Kenya being at the forefront of mobile advancement. So it coming in place of that. And right now with AI development, we could see more widespread use of or more access of healthcare facilities. So that will be a help. And also with the increased data use with AI, we know that we could get some more precision in the diagnostics, precision in the treatment, and also with the medication. So obviously AI will go a long way in addressing the needs of the healthcare sector.
Kenya, of course, is one of Africa's most industrialized economies. What's your view in terms of the impact that AI might have on the economy? Do you think it will largely benefit from it? Can we expect more economic growth as a result of the technology?
Yeah, definitely. It will go a long way to develop the human capital in Kenya. And we cannot at the moment quantify the exponential impact from the AI, but I think it will go a long way to be able to address the human capital needs, more so in the healthcare, to reduce even the cost. Right now, what is the all rage is now the increased cost, the statutory deduction to the healthcare, which you call SHIF, Social Health Insurance Fund, and that has increased the cost of healthcare. But now with the adoption of AI technologies, platforms, it will now be able to lower the cost of access to healthcare, and can also be able to develop the human capital.
Okay, Churchill Ogutu, thank you very much again for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Now, the price of your morning coffee is about to hit your pocket hard, if it hasn't already. Prices are going through the roof because of a global shortage largely blamed on the climate crisis. But in South Sudan, farmers are turning to a climate-resistant coffee plant that can withstand drought and pests, as Brenda Redido reports.
Farmers in Zara County, southwest of South Sudan, are trying to revive the coffee industry, which had been disrupted by regional conflict.
Correct. So if it's just going yellow...
The Excelsa species has been grown in the country for years, but it's now being recognized for its resilience because of its thick leaves and deep roots.
But this coffee is climate resistant. We think it would be a great thing for South Sudan to explore further. I think there's lots of opportunities here to help the coffee industry as climate changes in the future.
Catherine Basham is one of many farmers growing Excelsa coffee. They're hoping to have a bumper harvest with good profits.
I am very happy with my coffee. I'd like to jump and touch the branch of the trees because of my happiness. Those who haven't planted, be strong and plant like me. And when you plant, look after it properly. Don't let it get burnt by fire. I look after my coffee and fire hasn't harmed it.
I'm happy because I'm seeing the coffee is now matured, and I'm happy that I'm starting to enjoy money. I'm now smelling money.
Once harvested, the fresh beans are sorted and then exported, while others are produced for the local market. The most common coffee species worldwide are Robusta and Arabica, while Excelsa is native to South Sudan. It contributes less than 1% of coffee to the global market. However, sellers plan to capitalize on its distinctive and unique flavor, with its nutty, woody, and fruity tones that give a memorable tasting experience. And now that it's being grown more widely, could it establish South Sudan as one of Africa's leading countries producing resilient coffee? Brenda Radido, Africa Matters.
And that is your latest business and finance news. Bye for now.